And I've got my guests seated, three of them ready, and we're going to get into the discussion right now. And as I intimated to you, we will be looking at the Auditor-General, who has now given indication that he's going to issue surcharges and disallowances. And we are all excited about that, towards retrieving all stolen monies from the states. And then there is also the towing levy that is gathering a sort of revolts. And I ask the question, is that a case of paying tax to a private organization in a wrong create, loot, and share approach to reducing carnage on our roads, or the matter of a cabal on a mission to deliberately misinform the public out of sheer hate for a growing indigenous business? The minority walks out of Parliament on the controversial Ameri rescission process as their members face police over the 510 million emergency power deal. Also, the finance minister declares that government policies are yielding expected results at a time the invisible forces threaten onslaught over lack of jobs, despite assurances from the party that party faithful will be favored in job openings and creation. So these will occupy our minds this morning, and my guest in the studio. Start with from my extreme right, and that is Yao Opong. He is a lawyer and teaches the law at the Central University. Next to him is Dr. Eric Odro Osai, Dean of Graduate Studies, Institute of Local Government Studies, and will shortly be joined by Inu Safoseni. He's a lawyer and MP Tamale Central. He's also ranking member, Legal and Constitutional Committees of Parliament. But to my immediate left is a very good friend of mine, a brother I can say, Dr. Gideon Boako. He's Technical Economic Advisor, Office of the Vice President. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Samson.
Right. Okay, so we're going to start straight away and just have a preliminary take on the Auditor-General's move. The Auditor-General had a press conference this week, spoke to the media, and indicated clearly that he is going to begin the processes of retrieving lost monies to the state. There's something bit on it. Let's take a listen, and then we'll come and look at it quickly.
I want to be sure that this exercise does not translate into just victimizing people unduly. And for that matter, before I issue a certificate, I want them to build a complete file, and the file, normally I tell them to leave it in my office. I go through the file. When I'm satisfied, I issue the certificate. So 2 weeks ago, I issued the first batch of 4 certificates, and they are gone and served on the people. Starting from yesterday, I'm reviewing 7 more files. And before the close of day today, I'll be issuing 7 more certificates, because my review shows that work done is good. And so we will have reached 11. We are going gradually. Currently, the only person issuing this certificate is the Auditor-General, myself, because I want to be sure that I start on a very good note. The Act provides under section 17, subsection 2, that the amount so specified is due 60 days after you are served with the certificate. So when we issue the disallowance or the surcharge, and you receive, or the certificate is served on you, you have 60 days to pay that money. It continued to say, within the 60 days also, you are allowed to appeal against the disallowance and the surcharge at the High Court. At the High Court, not any other court. You must go to the High Court and appeal against the surcharge and the disallowance.
Right, so that's the Auditor-General, Domilovo. Now, I go straight to my guest, and ask what your views are about what he is beginning to do, and I start with Dr. Odrosai. And Doc, the last time you came, I was talking about your constitution and how you were annotating it in a way that I don't pretty much like. You're rewriting the constitution. Look at what he's written there. And one thing about Doc also is that he comes to the studio with a notebook. So you see his notebook here, and he's written points that he's going to use in the discussion. And I can see that Dr. Boako has also done the same. He's got some notes. Okay, so get ready and enjoy the show. What do you make of what the Auditor-General is beginning to do?
Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to our viewers and listeners. I think it is long overdue. The Auditor-General is empowered under Article 187 of the Constitution and under its own Establishment Act to be able to do some of these things. And by public finance, once you audit and you surcharge people, you have to go ahead and then make sure that the amount surcharged on them are paid. I don't know what has happened to our system, but for me, it is a good sign that now we are trying to inject discipline in the public financial management system. And I'm happy my brother, Dan Domelevu, has started doing something like that. The Institute of Chartered Accountant is happy because he's a chartered accountant, he's a member of the institute.
Right.
And I think that he should continue. He shouldn't rest. My only challenge is that why should he allow an organization to go to court for the court to compel him to do what he's required to do?
Welcome to the Honorable Yusuf Seni. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Right.
That's what is required to do under Article 187, but it's better late than never. I think it's a good sign he should continue. The only thing is that I would not expect him to make statements to the effect that it is political witch hunting or whatever it is. It should not be political witch hunting. Under the ethics of the profession, you are expected to perform your work as required by the international auditing standards. And that's what I expect my brother Dan Domelevu to be doing so that it will inure to the benefit of the whole of Ghana.
Right. And in all of this, we ought to recognize that this whole fight began with Occupy Ghana. They began the whole thing crusading that the Auditor-General ought to exercise that function of his by issuing disallowances and surcharges. And it wasn't too much of a palatable thing with the previous Auditor-General, but eventually they were forced and they went to court. And they got the Supreme Court to make a pronouncement that the Auditor-General had no option in the matter. He should just go ahead and do what the law requires him to do. And in fact, Occupy Ghana went forward upon being invited by the Rules of Court Committee to literally draft the rules and supplied, and which were used for the processes now. And thankfully, this Auditor-General is going ahead to execute the agenda. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning. Proud to say that on the sidelines, I was also part of the back door,
right,
back room persons who were also giving our advice here and there to Occupy Ghana,
right,
as well as you. Now, for me, as Doctor said, the highlight really is the role played by Occupy Ghana, and indeed the Supreme Court. We, in recent time, has observed a Supreme Court that is very active. There is an emerging concept of judicial activism, which I think the Supreme Court in recent times have seriously applied in situations where you may not exactly find a solution in the law. The Supreme Court has taken up its duty as a policymaker as well. And so when you look at the orders that were issued, the one that I think is quite remarkable is the fact that where the Auditor-General himself fails to issue a disallowance and comply with law, the Auditor-General has violated the Constitution. And we know that when you violate an order of the Supreme Court, Article 2, down there will tell you that that can constitute a ground for imprisonment of about 10 years.
Right.
And so the Auditor-General,
and after that, you lose the opportunity to be in public service for another 10 years.
Exactly. So the Auditor-General, in doing this, must also remind himself and his officers that if there is a clear evidence of any situation where he should issue these orders and he fails, of course, if somebody wants to be charitable, they may go for an order which you call mandamus to compel him to do, others can just straight away invoke these orders issued against him by the Supreme Court, and criminal proceedings may commence against him personally. So it's not a situation where it is one-sided.
Right.
And it's a very important provision in the Constitution and the law, which I think that maybe moving forward, more organizations, sometimes it's so difficult for an individual to commence a suit like this. But more organizations should go by this kind of activism.
Right.
And we are much grateful to the Supreme Court itself, because if they had not understood these things in the context of the suit that was brought by the by Occupy Ghana, perhaps a different result may have emanated and may not have achieved this decisive purpose. And then also, of course, the Auditor-General has been very active. Previous ones hadn't been. I don't know whether without this case, he would himself would also been active. So we are going to watch the Auditor-General. Occasionally, they should report to us what disallowances and surcharges orders he has issued, whether there had been any, and for some reason he was not able to comply, so that the rest of us can take him on. But I think it's good for our legal system and also the governance system we have chosen for ourselves.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to hear from Eunice of Sydney before Gideon takes the very final, take on this. And the Auditor-General says he's issued 11 or so far, and he will not disclose who the names are. I think that's a good conduct, maybe, so that you don't prejudicially criminalize the individuals involved. And when they pay and everything else later, he would inform us. But you have been in Parliament, and the Public Accounts Committee goes through the ritual every year of going through this report, and the nation, gets shocked at the revelations. End of story. We had a situation where even President Mahama had to issue orders that this should be done, prosecutions and everything, and nothing seems to have happened. This certainly is the way to go, right?
Oh, definitely. And before I even start my contribution, let me extend my felicitations to all my co-panelists, especially my brother, Justice. When I joined the Supreme Court. Yes, I think that basically, I think it's a right step in the right direction. In this country, we have called time and again for people who have misconducted themselves in public office to be held accountable. The difficulty actually has been setting up institutions to deal with findings of the Public Accounts Committee. And at a point, Mrs. Georgina Wood set up the financial tribunals to be able to deal with such issues. But clearly, when it went to the courts, it also suffered the difficulties of cases going through court and monies being retrieved.
And I think up to now, the information we have is that only one case has been reported to those courts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but can we think about it? I think this is very good. It's very good in the sense that we're shifting responsibility to officers in public office. I've been in public office, and sometimes you will wonder why public officers will conduct themselves that way. I mean, sometimes they don't go to spend the money, but they're just negligent or reckless in keeping records. Sometimes even retiring the resources that have been allocated to them is a problem. And so you find all that, and at the end of the year when the audit is done, they bring you queries. And when you call officers to come and tell you what has happened, why X, Y, Z has been reported not to have been complied with in accordance with law, then they are found wanting. I mean, they will swear heaven and earth that the money was used. But if the money was used, it must be accounted for. And so if it is not accounted for, somebody must be held responsible. And so I believe that what the Auditor-General is doing is good. It's good for this country. Look at it from all levels. Clearly good. It ties in neatly with the Public Financial Management Act that holds public officers responsible to their budgets and all those things. So clearly, I also think that in the final analysis, after he's gotten the money, they should name the people. We should name the people.
Okay.
And shame them.
Right.
Okay.
So now he's begun the process by issuing the surcharge, and this is to only 11 people so far, and they are supposed to voluntarily come and pay, refund those monies. We do not know how much for each individual. what are some of the difficulties you anticipate he will encounter?
Well, people will file the petitions, complaints. Like I've said, my own experience in office clearly shows that some public officers do not spend the money, but they fail, neglect, or refuse to even retire monies that have been given to them. And so clearly they will file complaints, and others accusing subordinate officers of not having done the proper thing. But clearly someone must be held responsible. I believe that he will face such petitions and complaints, and I'm sure many will come to him. Whatever be the case, somebody must be held responsible. And he's trying to identify the proper persons to be held responsible in this particular matter. And if he's successful, and we must commend him for taking the initiative, and if he's successful, I'm sure many other officers will sit up.
Okay. Look, now, if they don't do this voluntarily, he'll be compelled to put these people before court. How do you expect that this process will go on smoothly and to rake in the monies that we are expecting we'll get back?
Yeah, thank you very much, my good friend, and it's nice to see you once again.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and good morning to our viewers and our listeners. I think that if you look at what the Constitution and the laws of this country impose on the Auditor-General, it's a huge responsibility. And recently I learned that the Auditor-General has a sole responsibility to make sure that all audits and forensic audits that can lead to prosecution is done by the Auditor-General. And so that's a huge responsibility. And going forward, if as a country would want to kind of mitigate the problems of public officers sitting back, laxity, negligence, and then also getting themselves into the trap of business as usual, and then they get to office, they don't do what is expected of them, and at the end of the day, you don't see any kind of sanctions being meted out to them. It becomes business as usual, and we keep on having this and this. I had a slight experience on the Public Accounts Committee when I was doing my national service in Parliament, and sitting in Public Accounts Committee meetings, sometimes even though the Auditor General's report quite lacks, it takes some months and years before it comes.
Right.
There were situations where public officers who were found in the Auditor General's report were still working at the time, and they had to appear before the Public Accounts Committee. And you can tell from their countenance and their disposition that there wasn't some element of seriousness in them responding to even questions from members of the Public Accounts Committee. It's because over the years, they have seen their seniors, predecessors, people they came to meet in office, go through the same attitude, laxity, negligence, and all of that, but nothing happens to them. So they see it as, oh, even if I do it, nothing's going to happen to me at the end of the day. Now, it is good that this time around, the Auditor General seems to be in a position to crack their whip and apply the laws. And I want to commend Occupy Ghana for initiating and pushing this, and I'm told this whole thing is precipitated by their actions, and right. that's very good. It's part of the civic responsibilities. And so I think we would want to encourage the Auditor General. It's not going to be a smooth exercise for him to embark upon. And I read from one of the news portals yesterday, I don't know how true it is, that he alleges that people are trying to come to him to talk to him and all of that. And that also goes to deepen why I support the reason why he did not put out the names. We know our social setting and our society. If he had put out the names, the next day he will see a big pastor coming to him, and we see a chief of high repute coming to him to talk to him that, oh, this is exactly, this is my person, let him go and all of that. I think we need to be serious. If we want to ensure that public officers are held accountable for the acts that they commit or omit, then this kind of actions ought to be taken regularly.
Particularly at the time when your government is looking to rake in money from acts of corruption. Because during the campaign, that was one of the rhetoric, that you're going to make sure that the money is there, you know, to fund projects and stuff, and that you're going to get a lot from stopping corruption. Yeah, so you should be a lot more excited.
Yeah, we are happy, but also we are happy it is not coming from us, so that somebody will say this is political witch hunting. Okay. Okay, so this is the Auditor General. It's the Auditor General for all of us, irrespective of which political color. And so, yeah, exactly. So he's supposed to work in the interest of the larger Ghanaian community. And so let us depoliticize this. Let us see this as an apolitical exercise. And it doesn't matter who is caught in this matter, if it is on the left side or the right side of the political divide. Let's all support it and make sure that we get what we are due as a country, and people don't take us for right for just occupying public offices.
Okay. But he doesn't understand allowance and surcharge. So if we may,
Yeah, we have gone over it over a period of time now. You want to try?
Oh, well, I mean, as set out in the Supreme Court case,
right.
Just briefly, the first is where an officer or employee of government has willfully or negligently omitted to collect or receive any public money due to the government. Any public money was not duly accounted for and paid into the consolidated fund or other designated public accounts. It goes on. Then it has to be noted that the above provision of the Auditor-General empowers him to disallow, which means that if a person brings out, let's say, a project, the Auditor-General has the power to stop it or just cause it to be seized, its implementation to be seized.
Right.
Then he may surcharge, which means that where the state has lost some money as a result of this, even negligence, the person who caused it has to be paid. If he's an employee, his own salary or other emoluments due him will be taken from him, as it were, to the extent that it will settle the debt.
But the mark of the surcharge is that you're going to pay with interest.
With interest.
You know, surcharge, an additional money that you have to pay.
Bank of Ghana interest. It should be interbank interest.
Interbank interest.
So,
yes.
So if
why Bank of Ghana interest?
Bank of Ghana is the standard we use.
No, but we should ensure that the maximum punitive measure is applied.
Quickly before I get Dr. Do to tell us what he thinks, the challenges that he's going to face, the Auditor-General, and he himself anticipates it. So he actually gave the caution and warning to his own people that we are here doing the job, it's not about politics and everything, so everybody stay off. How do you think he's going to be able to surmount that? Because obviously people will reach out to him, as we understand, and either they are in government or they are out of government, they will use various means to try to get him to tone down. Yes, what do you
I just wanted some clarity. If I understand well, it means that this surcharge will precede any possible prosecution, and if the person doesn't default, there wouldn't be any prosecution, right?
That is so.
Okay.
Definitely. As an accountant, let me explain how these things plays out.
Right.
When you finish your audit and you make up certain findings, you give them the opportunity to respond. So the auditee will respond. You incorporate his responses into it. Now the response would tell you that maybe an expenditure has been incurred. There is a standard guideline that you need to comply with. You fail to comply with that standard. So though you may have captured that expenditure in your financial report, I think that is not the way it should go. So I would then disallow it. Once I disallow it, you would have to make sure that you refund that money. Right. The surcharge is where you have gone through a process, you have misapplied the financial regulations, the organization has incurred some loss, and then you have to refund the loss to the organization plus a certain interest.
Great.
That is surcharge.
Great.
Good. Now, the challenges he's likely to face. The first and foremost thing is that if you are an auditor, as a professional accountant, before you go to court or before you retrieve, you should make sure that you have a very good evidential basis. The evidential basis requires that the auditor who undertook the audit and who wrote the audit report complied with standard audit guidelines. The standard audit guidelines requires that you give them the opportunity to respond. You incorporated the auditee's response into it. The auditor who conducted the audit himself should be qualified within the auditing laws of Ghana. And within the auditing laws of Ghana requires that that person must be a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants with a certain level of competence to be able to bring that particular audit report. In this particular instance, the Auditor-General is the one leading the charge. So he's clothed with the power and the law and the professional competence to do that. But the challenge he's going to face here is the audit process and the validity, verifiability, reliability of the evidence. Okay. So they should tighten the evidence in such a way that there will not be any escape route.
Especially that some of these things go way back, way back.
That is.
Okay, thank you very much. Now.